What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all enjoying your Sunday afternoon so far. This is NYG Jeffy T85 here, and I'm going to talk about some of the the early off-season quotes said by the Brooklyn Nets and their players as the Nets officially start the beginning of their off-season since after they lost their game yesterday against the Philadelphia 76ers, in which they were swept out of the playoffs, and they now start to begin what they feel like it's going to be the beginning of their off-season. And it's going to be some off-season quotes from guys like Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Nicolas Claxton. Some quotes that these players are going to say. I'll start off with Mikal Bridges. Bridges actually took a lot of accountability after the loss that happened yesterday in the sweep. And he pretty much blamed himself for being the reason why he feels like he let the team down in this series overall, which I can't really put too much stock in that because Mikal Bridges, for the most part, since he was traded to the Nets, has been such an excellent addition to the team that it's very hard for me to just pretty much blame and say Mikal Bridges is the main reason why this team lost. Now, yesterday he did have a terrible game for the Brooklyn Nets, but at the same time, Bridges is not the sole reason why this team lost this game yesterday and lost this series. Bridges pretty much went on to say at his press conference, I feel like these past games I've been letting the team down, and I hate not winning a game for them. It hurts me as I'm trying, but it's part of it, man. It's just own up to it and realize you could just get better. That's the biggest thing for me. Bridges is obviously taking a lot of accountability for what happened during these games, and he's pretty much saying that he feels like that he let the team down a little bit, when in reality he didn't, but I can understand him feeling that type of mantra, and that he feels like he can do a lot more for this basketball team going forward. He also added, while defending James Harden, I love my guys to death, and I told them, that's on me. I'm sorry I couldn't come through and just win some games. I just wanted to make some shots, but I promised them that I'll be better next time. And then he went on to say even more. They just played harder than us in terms of how the Philadelphia 76ers played compared to how the Brooklyn Nets played in this series. That's just one thing. I think you just can't relax. And Bridges went on to say even more on this one. One word. He told him, God, give the ball to Tobias Harris, that great team basketball. In terms of what happened during that series with the Tobias Harris overall. So obviously, taking a lot of accountability is Mikal Bridges. But I think overall he did a terrific job for this team. He's definitely looking like the future of this basketball team going forward. So I have nothing to say more about Bridges. And Bridges as well on how to handle fatigue of the NBA, including high minutes. The biggest thing is just getting in really good shape and staying in shape, and maybe try things he's never tried before. But I'd rather have it this way to not playing at all. I'll tell you that it's a good problem to have. Obviously, he's talking about the amount of minutes that he had to play during this playoff run, and the fact that he needs to go out there and try to, work on his fatigue, work on being able to not get worn down during the end of the NBA season. Obviously, when you're playing an 82-game grind, you're going to get worn down during the season. You've got to try to make sure that you could stay in tip-top shape going forward for the Brooklyn Nets. So that's another thing right there. But now to get to some of the other players in terms of what they have to say. Get to Nicolas Claxton. Claxton, who obviously signed a deal this past offseason, 2-year, $17.2 million contract. Obviously, he played way above expectations than what he did before. So, Claxton and some of the things that he said overall, and he had a bad 2 first games, but he really picked it up during the second 2 games. Obviously, Joel Embiid didn't play in that game 4, but Claxton really picked up his play overall. And Claxton said in terms of his offseason goals going into this offseason, the biggest piece is just staying healthy and being available. Availability is the best ability. Things to focus on definitely is getting stronger, adding some good muscle, and continuing to work on my free throw shooting, maybe shooting a little bit more too. Obviously, Claxton is taking into accountability the fact that He obviously needs to stay healthy first. That's the most important thing with all these basketball players. And of course, because of the fact that he's a very slender frame for a big, he wants to try to see if he can add a little bit more muscle so that way when he goes up against a Joel Embiid or some of these bigger centers in the NBA, he's not going to be able to get bullied around by some of these guys in the front court, which is a good thing to hear that Claxton knows what he needs to try to work on. That includes adding a little bit of muscle, but at the same time, he knows he needs to work on his offensive game going into this season. And of course, he needs to try to do a little bit better in terms of his free throw shooting and in terms of maybe shooting the ball a little bit more offensively and becoming more of an offensive playmaker for this team going into the 2023 season, 2023-2024 season. Some of the things that I want to hear what Jacque Vaughn has to say as well in terms of Claxton. To see his growth this year really makes me realize why I want to do this. Head coach Jacque Vaughn says, to be around a guy that is totally different than when I met him. His seriousness, his ability to direct guys, to know how to grow with guys, to be the right place and learn from it, to be the wrong place and learn from it, the change free throw routine, and to be able to be locked in trying to get better. A lot of growth from him, more to come. Obviously, he's talking about the play overall of Nicolas Claxton and the ability that he showed going into the season and the improvement that he needs to make going forward. Now I'm going to talk about Spencer Dinwiddie. Obviously, Dinwiddie was acquired in that trade along with Dorian Finney-Smith, who I'll get to his quotes a little bit later. But Dinwiddie and his quotes overall. Dinwiddie likened the Nets to the Bucks without Giannis. You have two distinct paths. If you can get a Giannis, you're a very good team at that point. If you don't, you have a bevy of draft picks and several guys that can net you more picks. So they can go either route. Obviously, he's talking about the current situation with his roster right now, and that could honestly include himself too. It's not very out of the question that Spencer Dinwiddie could not be on this team after this year. But we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen in terms of Spencer Dinwiddie. But he pretty much is linking up what's going on with the Nets and in terms of their players on the current team and what's going to be happening with this team going forward. So that's a very interesting quote overall by Spencer Dinwiddie, saying that, you know, they're pretty much comparing their team to what it's like with the Bucks without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously he was acquired in the trade with Spencer Dinwiddie that brought him over to Brooklyn this past season. And Finney-Smith pretty much went over what he experienced coming to Brooklyn and what he needs to work on. Dorian Finney-Smith pretty much talked about first Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and their emergence so far. And Bridges pretty much says, it was great watching Mikal and Cam blossom in front of our eyes. It was amazing to see. Now I feel like I got to get better, and I didn't have a great 26 games. No, he did not. He was very erratic from the court. Defensively, I thought he had some moments, but offensively, it was something much more to be desired in terms of his overall play on the court. But he felt like he started playing better towards the end and started making some shots. He did at times, but there was too many times where Dorian Finney-Smith was invisible during the season and that he needed to do a lot more for this team going forward. So hopefully he could end up doing that going into the season. Finney-Smith also said, Cam Thomas, whom he known since school, I know this is probably going to be summer for him, too. I know he wants to play, and he could probably help us. Obviously, he's talking about Cam Thomas and what he could do for this team going forward, and how his play is going to be a big focal point for this Brooklyn Nets team going forward. Thomas didn't really get a lot of playing time towards the end of the season, but I could easily see the Nets trying to get more out of their third-year guard, now soon-to-be third-year guard, in this next season. Now I'm going to get to Cam Johnson in terms of what he's going to be talking about, his restricted free agency and what he's learned from becoming a Brooklyn Net along with Mikal Bridges in the trade for Kevin Durant. Johnson pretty much says going into restricted free agency. Going into the summer, I still have to do some evaluation on that front. I've been pretty locked into the season and not necessarily looking into it ahead because it's a big unknown. He also said, I've talked to the people here a little bit, and in terms of how the season went and what the future could look like. And like I said, the people in the organization, I believe, are very, very high-quality people. Obviously, he's talking about Sean Marks and the people in the organization like Joe Tsai and those guys. And he also talked about in terms of signing early or letting the market dictate itself out. I haven't fully developed that plan yet, obviously, because the team just pretty much ended their season yesterday. But one thing I've learned this year is the business will be the business every day acts accordingly. So I'll do whatever I and my family and reps determine best for the future. Obviously, that's the one thing that he wants to try to do going forward. He also talked about but Cam Johnson continued, whether that's being here somewhere else or I can't fully say. All I can say is I've really come to appreciate the people here, and that means a tremendous amount to me, and I definitely have the factors that I'm considering, and I'm warmed up to New York certainly. Obviously, he's very happy with where he is in New York, and I think for the most part, he should be one of the budding pillars on this team going forward, and he should be a guy that this team should look to bring back on a long-term deal and be one of the focal points on this basketball team going into the future, along with Mikal Bridges and I believe Nicolas, Claxton, and maybe Cam Thomas as well. Now I'm going to get to Sean Marks, the general manager of the Brooklyn Nets, who is probably going to be on the hot seat and is going to be a lot of expected for him this offseason and what could be a very pivotal offseason for Sean Marks and what he's going to do with this team going forward. First, he starts out with Ben Simmons, who obviously missed a good chunk of this season due to injuries. And Marks quoted on Ben Simmons saying, he is checking the boxes and meeting these different markers along the way. So at this point, he does not need surgery, which is a positive. He does not need second back surgery overall after he had one this past off season. That is the hope going forward, and that he will not have to endure another surgery. That would be a positive right now for multiple reasons. Also, in case the team is thinking about trading him this offseason, the fact that he doesn't need another offseason surgery is a positive, and it's going to make other teams, if they want to think about trading for him, it's going to make it a lot more interesting and possibly more enticing for a potential trade during the offseason. In terms of what Mark says about Cam Johnson, Cam knows how we feel. JV and I sat with him this morning, and we hope he's back. He is a tremendous person on and off the court, and he has high character, he has a high IQ, is off the charts. That's exciting to be around. Hopefully he's here. Obviously, him being a restricted free agent and being a lot in demand, you're expecting him to pretty much be a guy that is going to be very, very well received going into restricted free agency. And a lot of teams are going to be interested in trying to sign him this offseason. So we're going to have to wait and see how that's going to play out going into this offseason overall. Sean Marks also said that the Nets having a lot of picks that aren't their own takes away their ability to tank. Obviously, he's talking about the fact that they don't have any of their draft picks because of the fact they traded a lot of them away in the James Harden trade a year and a half ago. So pretty much the Nets are going to have to try and go out there and play well on the basketball court. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. Now, Sean Marks, and the most critical thing that he said, which is the one thing that this basketball team is going to have to do in the offseason, every single Nets fan and Nets blogger, Nets content creator, and Nets reporter has said this. Sean Marks pretty much says, without a doubt, we need to make some changes in terms of adding some size. And he thinks that JV said it last night, add a little nastiness. One thing that has plagued this basketball team, not just this season, but the past seasons overall, was the fact that this basketball team lacked in size in the front court and lacked in size overall. This basketball team needs to try to add some more nastiness, more front court experience, more front court players on this team that are going to bang in the middle of the court and are going to try to draw fouls and going to try to stir the pot a little bit, to quote my good buddy Earl Cole. You're going to need to get guys that have some size in the front court, are going to body up against the defender, also be guys that are going to be shot blockers and make it difficult for the offensive players to be able to get towards the front court and pretty much have their way against the Nets. So I like the fact that Sean Marks brought up that quote right there, that the Nets need to do a better job in terms of their front court play. And they need to add more size on this team. And I would even argue this team needs to add more bench. I think the Nets definitely need to add a better bench overall going into this offseason. So hopefully that this team is going to make those necessary changes going into this upcoming offseason for Brooklyn. A very pivotal one because of the fact that we don't own a lot of our draft picks due to the trade of James Harden. A lot of them are now owned by Houston, but we'll have to wait and see what the Brooklyn Nets are going to do this offseason and the type of changes they're going to do. But that's just some of the quotes that I wanted to give you guys today from General Manager Sean Marks, Head Coach Jacque Vaughn, and some of the key players on the team like Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie, Nicolas Claxton, and Cam Johnson going forward. And we'll see what the Brooklyn Nets are going to do this offseason. So hit that like button if you haven't already. And give us up to NYG Jeffy T85. More news updates and chatter surrounding the Brooklyn Nets. Turn on the bell for notifications on the next video we're short dropping on the channel surrounding the Brooklyn Nets. And you guys let me know in the comment section what you think about these end of the season press conferences and quotes from some of the key players on the Nets, as well as General Manager Sean Marks and Head Coach Jacque Vaughn, as the Nets begin their offseason today. And we'll have to wait and see what this team is going to do in terms of additions, subtractions, and trades and draft picks going into the offseason. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take it easy, and let's go Brooklyn Nets. As always, it's a Nets world, and we're all just living in it.